Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. Stand out, don't fit in. Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. Today I have the real pleasure to be speaking with two extraordinary people who have both inspired me, each in their own way. I've had the tremendous pleasure to interview each of them for my previous podcast last year. So without further ado, Jamie Keeling and Kevin Benison, welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to have you both here.
Thank you, Aggie. Take it as great credit that you couldn't even keep your face straight there when you were introducing us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Aggie. Thanks very much for the invite. And just as a forewarning and disclaimer, your viewership, your listeners have no idea what they're about to get.
We feel like we're about to give, to be fair.
That's the whole point, I think, because a trio podcast interview, it's something I've never done before, so it's... I think it's going to be legendary, with a very loose definition of the word legendary. Can I start?
That's for sure. It'll be an experience.
We can put it politely and call it a ramshackle.
Not the same thing as a car crash.
Yeah, they're both polite terms for what it will actually be.
Shall we start with like a brief introduction? So if you could give us, I'll start with you, Jamie, a brief or a 60-second elevator pitch of who you are.
Oh, fucking hell, right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jamie Keeling. I am the founder of the Bulletproof app. I work with business owners and tell them what they're doing wrong and what they can do right and help them improve the performance of their business. I also have my own podcast called Optimise now. So do make sure you go and check that out and subscribe. And apart from that, I like kicking people in the face. I've got 7 kids, or at least I will do in August. And that's about me. Over to you, Kevin.
Yeah, well, wonderful. Well done for removing the PG rating straight away, Jimmy. We've got that one. Parental guidance required. What has it gone up to 15 already with an F-bomb? Brilliant. Anyway. So, yeah, I'm just a bloke that does stuff and talks about things and that. I can't really define myself in any particular way because I've failed it so much over the past few years, including marriage, business, careers, launching things online, all sorts of stuff I've failed at. If you want to know how to fail something, come to me and I am your man. But seriously, though, I have learned a hell of a lot out of that and I've grown massively as a human being, I believe. A very dynamic character. Now I have gone back into full-time employment working for a national company developing culture, competence and communication within the organisation. A very difficult time at the moment. We have a lot of employees sitting at home, of course, and like me, wondering what the hell to do now that everything has been shut down. So we are there for them and we're developing a good well-being policy, something that I'm at the heart of and assisting and making sure that it's supportive and it's two-way. Communication is something I'm passionate about, particularly when it includes profanity.
We have to mention there as well, Kevin has done himself down a serious amount there. He's a former member of the Airborne Forces. He's 2 times world champion in Tae Kwon Do and an all-round fucking amazing bloke. So, massive respect and credit to this fella.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. I thought that came through in my introduction there, but...
Do you know, I said earlier that I have been inspired by you, and I vividly remember it was just over 2 years ago. I was at the gym and I was listening to Jamie's podcast. At that time I didn't really know Jamie. I don't even remember how I came across your podcast, Jamie. So it was one of the first episodes of Optimise Me Now podcast. And you had Kevin there as a guest. And I remember you would pick some subjects, kind of half randomly. You would pick a page of a book. And you would just, off the bat, just have a discussion about that. And I found that discussion captivating, and your knowledge as well about, the ability to talk about something without any preparation, and it was an intelligent conversation as well. I really enjoyed it. That, as I said, I found it captivating and inspiring. So, to be right now, 2 years, of course, 2 years is a long time, but looking back 2 years, I could have never thought that I would be interviewing both of you for my podcast. So it's, legend. It's great to have you both.
I'm privileged that you described that episode as captivating as intelligent. I'm not sure that's how I would have described it at the time. The podcast has certainly come a long way since then, and my dear Kevin Bennison has been on the show a fair few times since then. It's amazing how far you can come in a couple of years. But yeah, I remember that we had it was a book on money. It was a book on money mindset and how.
1 minute, Jim. That was the opening, the launch episode, wasn't it?
That was the launch episode. Yeah, it was the very first one.
Right.
It was a book on money, and it had two opposing views on how rich people think and how poor people think, and we literally just flicked through the book and just picked random opinions, random money mindset opinions, and just discussed them. Yeah.
Well, it's very, I don't know, I suppose you were half joking about what you said earlier, but I think it's very subjective. I mean, what you think that goes across, and what kind of people will be influenced and get inspired by that. I mean, really. I mean what I said about that being an intelligent conversation. It really, I still remember it. I think it was January 2018. But I remember, I was listening to it and it was fascinating. I don't know, maybe it struck a chord within me. I suppose it wouldn't be fascinating for every single person, but for me it was. It inspired
I'm quite
me.
excited that incoherence and stuff that's indecipherable could be deemed intelligent. Wonderful. And I'm just going to blather shit, and then wow, I don't understand what this guy is talking about. It must be intelligent. Love that.
Well, it's the inspiration for my podcast was always the Joe Rogan experience. I love the work Joe does and his work with his podcast, and just everything that he does in terms of his content is very honest. And they would always talk about very real things, and he'd always give his honest opinion, and he wouldn't be afraid to ask difficult questions and really subject himself to, like, well, am I thinking about this in the right way? And am I right? Am I wrong? What's everybody else's opinion? And it really inspired me to just start a platform, just do something where I could do the same thing. I copied him essentially. I just wanted to be able to, I got so much out of those conversations when I listened to that podcast. And I thought, well, if I'm getting so much out of this, then there should be more of this stuff. There should be more of these honest, real conversations. And I do my best to be as authentic and real in those conversations as possible. And I think I get more and more so as the years go by. We were talking about this only the other day, Kev, about when you say, that's the way that things are and the way that you see them. It's your perception of them. There's no such thing as a certain thing or topic being one way or the other. We all see things in different ways. It's everything subject to our own individual perceptions and opinions and life experiences. And it's really interesting to be open enough to have conversations around what those are and try and understand other people's perceptions and points of view. And it's been a real privilege over the years to have not just Kevin, but everybody else who's come on the show as well. They're not, generally speaking, I have some higher profile, some guests that are more well known, but generally speaking, they're people who don't have a huge audience. They're not famous. They're not well known in the strictest sense of the word. And yet the thing that's blown me away by that is the value, the stories that those people have brought to the show, and how much I've really enjoyed those conversations and how authentic they've been. And it's kind of the strapline for the show now has become, it's the show where we have great conversations with people you've probably never heard of. And I love that about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can completely relate to that. Interviewing people myself, which are not, world famous or people, but there are authentic, as you said, authentic conversations, some fascinating stories that I think we all have, but it's great to give them the opportunity to share that story with an audience. Guys, how do you know
your
Sorry.
podcast? I just love how you're both keeping it real in your podcast by getting real guests rather than the likes of, Tony Robbins and Gary Vee and David Hasselhoff and these people who everybody knows, fuck them, get the real people on. So it's much respect to you both for doing that.
It was obviously a conscious choice. Gary did ask if he could come on the show, but I had to my values and say, no, sorry, Gaz, it ain't going to happen, mate.
How do you guys know each other? How did you meet?
It was in a toilet cubicle, wasn't it?
That wouldn't surprise me.
We just came from there. Yeah, anyway.
All right, okay.
While you're spitting your water out.
I've got a 2,000-pound laptop in front of me. You're making me laugh when I'm drinking water. You twat.
We met through Tae Kwon Do.
Okay.
So we're both, we got chatting at competitions. We'd seen each other about competitions. Neither of us, I think, could be described as grey men. Jamie swanning around like a peacock with his Mohican. Me just big and unmissable, I've been at 6'8" in the morning and 6'7" in the evening, so very difficult to miss me, really. And we just saw each other about, and then we competed against each other within a tag team, so we were on opposite tag teams and we got talking about various things. We realised we were both, Jamie was in his family's business at the time and he was getting some business coaching. I had my own business, and then we spoke about personal development. We got into those conversations, and it just developed from there, just a beautiful blossoming bromance. It's the absolute just epitome of a wonderful romantic but platonic relationship.
I love it. Who won when you confronted each other?
Well, it was my team that won. That was when I won the gold medal for the tag teams in the World Championships. That was 2016, and
but it was a tag.
It was a tag team, yeah. So there was 3 on my team and 3 on Kevin's team. And I think, Kev, you were red stripe at the time. Is that right?
I was a blue belt. That was my first continuous competition, and I won gold medal in the individual sparring. That one, yeah. And then the tag was like, no, all right, let's do this,
So have you guys fought against each other? Maybe not officially, but like fun. I'm very curious.
No, we haven't actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's worth mentioning that although my team won that event, I remember it like it was yesterday because the proper caught Kev off his guard. Because Kev being like 6'7", 6'8", he's a big, imposing guy, right? And it's very easy when you stood across the ring from him, blue belt or otherwise. Like he's imposing. Looking at him, he's like, "Fucking hell, this guy's huge." I just remember, and because I was honestly shitting myself, and I was probably a red belt or black tag at this point, and I'd got a lot of competitions under my belt, but I looked at Kev the other side of the ring and I was like, shit, this guy's massive. And I just remember this thought process and it going through my mind. I said, right, the only way I'm going to do well here is if as soon as that bell goes, as soon as the guy says start, I've got to be leg up straight away, bam, 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 side kick. So we do this like hopping side kick in Taekwondo. And I just like, right, as soon as that hand goes down, my leg's up and I'm forward. I'm as quick as I can and I'm in. And I remember I did that. He said go and leg went up straight in and I got him in the ribs. That was just a great boost to get me started. And like the look on Kev's face, like clearly no one had ever had the balls to do that to him before. And then I think he restarted, and I got him with the same technique again. And then it was like, because when you're fighting in a tag team, it's very short bursts. So I was probably only in the ring at that point. It was a 3-minute round, and I was in the ring for about 30 seconds that time.
Yeah. Just to give a background to that it's point stop on tag team, so it's not continuous. So if somebody scores, they'll put you back to your marks, and then you start again. Yeah. So
and
then that's it. It's like stop, back to your marks kind of thing.
Yeah, and that made a big difference, because for me it was like, bam, got the 2 points, stopped, reset. So that was great, and then got him again. And I remember him saying to me after the match, "It's like, that was very good, but you're never going to be able to do that to me again." And he was right. I think we fought once or twice after that, Kev.
And tag teams, yeah.
Was it tag teams?
Yes.
Yeah. It didn't happen again.
And I said to Luke as well, because there was a big guy in Jamie's team who was the same height. That wasn't on that one, Jamie, was it? But you were in a tag team with Luke, and you called the tag team head kicks on Kevin.
Yeah.
And I said to both you and Luke, I says, you wouldn't get away with that in continuous, because I would just knock that leg down and come over the top. Because my thing is often, right, if you score a kick on your way in, great, glad for you. It's what you do with the rest of the counter, with the rest of that exchange, and whether you can deal with it on the way out. Because my typical thing is, I'll get in. If you get into my space, just expect a lot of punches coming. There's going to be a lot of punches raining down. And if you don't get out there quick, I can almost guarantee you and put money on it, there's a head kick in the post. That was so many people. I've got like video on the phone of a competition, the one after the last World Championships I was in. So it was in September 2018. It was my last competition. So my last competition as a colour belt before I then became black belt. And there was 2 separate people that the fight got stopped because I gave that combo of rattling off punches, watch for the head turning, head kick, and it burst both their noses, So there is that thing. But yeah, I remember seeing Jamie coming towards me, and it was almost like I was just powerless to do anything about it. He was flicking his side kicks out, and like all of a sudden he's there and he got me in the stomach, and I thought, you fucking bastard.
I can see it on your face.
Like, what? Yeah.
Guys, if I were to ask you, what's the one thing, the most important thing that you got by practicing martial arts and participating at a world class level? What's the one thing that you got?
So I want to make it clear, and I'm not doing it down what we've achieved, because we achieved well for our group. And I always make that really clear. Now, when I got to black belt, I did win a competition, and I won against somebody who's in the English national squad for our organisation in the final. So I also say, oh yeah, that's a great achievement. But in terms of our medals at World Championships, yes, we did fight at World Championships. Yes, other people called us world champions, but it was for that colour grade. So it wasn't like everybody. So I would not claim to be world class. I do say, and I think that it's fair in saying this, that if I'd got into this in my early 20s or late teens rather than mid to late 30s, which I did, I think I would have the possibility of perhaps becoming world class as a Tae Kwon Do practitioner, because of just how I adapted to it, and I used to gauge things and all the rest of it. I would gauge even some of the best people when I'd go and spar at the national team training. I used to just get better and pick up what some of the national squad guys were doing. And then, okay, I wasn't able to match them, but I was able to start negating them. And I think to answer your question, one thing that I've really learned from it, I suppose, is that when you train and approach things in a certain way. When you train hard, you work hard, you get yourself so you feel you are as prepared as well as you possibly can be. It's about then being present in that moment, and you can prepare yourself mentally, you know. And I used to visualize when I was driving to competitions. I would visualize the people I'm likely to come up against, visualize kicking them in the head, visualize winning the combos, visualize having my hand held up at the end. So my mind was already comfortable that that could be the outcome. So it's then when you get in there, it's still not comfortable. You know the person in front of you is going to try to hit you. It's not comfortable when you know the person in front of you is going to try and hit you. But when you can then slow things down and just be relaxed with the situation, and that's what I felt I was very good at. And I do intend to get back into competing. I've just had a really tough year the last year. And I'm now getting, my fitness is reasonable anyway, but I'm looking to ramp it up again. And I'll probably get back into competing with Tae Kwon Do. Maybe not the same way I was, but it's then, I used to find that even when I felt that I was behind or it was even, I didn't panic. And you learn when you train yourself both physically and mentally for the situations, the best outcome is training yourself so you don't panic, that you still remain in control. And I used to just think, it's okay, they're a little bit ahead, I just need to do something else to get on top of this. So I'd then tell myself, you know, one thing that I had for a while was when it was seeming a bit like close or the tempo had died down and it was getting to the last 30 seconds, I would tell myself in my head, up the rate. And that would it. I would just bring a greater level of intensity. And that was my decision. I would start dictating the pace. I would allow them to feel more comfortable and a little bit more where they were coming in. And almost in the mindset of, this guy's tired out a bit. Now we can go for him. And then I'd just leave that reserve of, right, now I'm going up the rate, see whether you can handle this. And I think I really learned that you can override the alarms that are going off in your mind and all these reservations and all these things, all these natural instincts that are inside you to actually decide how you're going to approach something.
Awesome. Jamie.
I think for me, what you have to understand with me is that when I started Tae Kwon Do, I was a bit of a shit place. I was married in a relationship that wasn't serving either of us. I was very unhappy in my work. I'd gone down numerous rabbit holes in all kinds of stuff, and as a result of that, had a very negative outlook on life and the world in general. And it was almost like, it was weird for me because I started on a whim purely because somebody, who I've no idea who it was, posted a Bruce Lee video to my Facebook wall. And I've told this story 100 times. And I don't know what it was that summer, in that moment in 2013, that made me see that video and just go, do you know what? I'm going to start a martial art. You know, never skive PE at school. I was the guy who would skive the PE lessons and skive the sports day and go and sit in the quarry drinking White Lightning cider. You know, I just wasn't an active person or sportsy person at all. So it was really weird that in that moment I decided, fuck it, I'm going to go and start a martial art, and then just start Googling stuff and what does Bruce Lee do, and then try and find something that was punching and kicking because that looked kind of fun. But Tae Kwon Do for me, it changed everything. Literally changed everything. You know, within 2 months of starting training, I'd filed for divorce. I had competed, and I was bullied at school. I used to have this recurring nightmare about getting jumped by a gang of blokes and getting mugged or knifed or whatever it was. And I had this again and again and again. It was just this nightmare that kept coming back and kept haunting me. And as soon as I started, after day one, I've never had that nightmare again. So I got a massive amount of self-confidence and self-belief from just understanding how my body works and what it was capable of physically and mentally as well. And it showed me that there were things that showed me how full of shit I was, because there were all these limiting beliefs I had. Oh, I can't do this. I'm not good enough for that. And when I started Tae Kwon Do and I got really obsessed with it, it became a way of life for me. You know, I wasn't just going to the classes for an hour. I would come home and I would spend 3 or 4 hours in the garden just going over all the stuff that we learned. I would stand at work with my feet in parallel ready stance. I'd do 10 press ups every time I went for a shit. You know, it literally did become all consuming for me, and it was so good for me. But it showed me that there were lots of limiting beliefs that I had about who I was and what I was capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed me that that was all bollocks. And it set me on the path ever since. And it's been a topsy-turvy ride. There's been ups and downs as there is for everybody. But it showed me that actually the best thing I can do is go and find those things that I think I can't do. If I want to do them, if they spark something inside of me, and just go and fucking try and do them anyway. Because like, what's the worst that can happen? Like when you start as a white belt in the martial art and you learn that, okay, I'm going to have to get punched in the face a few times and kicked in the ribs, and I'm going to have to go through some pain here to get to the place that I want to be. And you realize that failure, that pain is a necessary part of the process, and it can teach you so many things. That was massively freeing for me. And I met my fiance, my current fiance, through Tae Kwon Do. We've now got 3 beautiful children together. We've got another one on the way due in August. Like,
And 5 more.
You what?
5 planned.
I missed that. Say again.
I said, and 5 more planned.
5 more planned. No, absolutely not. But the point is, I've got to say, like, what's the biggest thing I've got out of Tae Kwon Do? Fuck me. Everything, man. Everything. My whole life is thanks to watching that stupid fucking Bruce Lee video in 2013 and just taking a shot, just saying fuck it. No, let's do it. Why not? What have I got to lose? Changed my life.
Fantastic. Actually, brings me to something else I wanted to ask you both about, something else that changed your life to some extent. So I wanted your thoughts, and that's Tony Robbins. So I know you, especially I know that Kevin has crewed extensively with Tony Robbins, but how has Tony Robbins changed your life in terms of your personal development journey?
Well, Jamie, I can answer first if you like. I'm ready to go with something, but
go for it, mate.
Yeah, well, even before you mentioned Tony Robbins, there was a particular moment at a Tony Robbins event that really did change my life. And I'd been into personal development for some time before I then actually went to Tony Robbins' UPW, Unleash Your Power Within, in 2017, an attendee. So I'd been studying some personal development, reading books and such like, and I'd been asking questions a lot longer before, for quite some time before I'd actually started finding books and content. I'd be asking some questions and then going, is this normal, and things like that, and like Googling stuff like, is it normal to have conversations with yourself and remonstrate with yourself in your head, and things like this. So I had an interest in psychology. But anyway, my marriage had been, and I was with a woman for 20 years up until 2017. I've got 4 wonderful sons. And my marriage was certainly not in a good place, but I'd made the decision that I could not control how my wife was, but I could certainly control the way that I showed up, in the hope that maybe that improved things. But I got to UPW in 2017, and it was difficult in many ways, but also hugely rewarding. It asked me difficult questions. There was some of the NLP techniques that Tony went through that were hugely helpful, and Joseph, who also presents at UPW, and that inspired me to then go and become an NLP practitioner myself. But there was a point I think on day 2, where, and I'm sure it's Joseph presenting at that point, and he talks about there's 2 big decisions, 2 things that you've not resolved, 2 big decisions that you need to make, and you know yourself that you need to make them. What are those? And I was in floods of tears. I was standing in tears because I knew what one of those decisions was. And I couldn't make it. It was too hard. It was too difficult. And I was in floods of tears because I knew that I wasn't being true to myself by making that decision. But that was one of those 2 decisions, but I didn't put that down. And that was one that was interfering with my whole life. And that decision essentially was, I've spoken to so many people, and I get people asking me and saying to me about the relationship and what about this and what about that. And I'll say, look, the first thing you've got to ask yourself is, do you deeply and honestly, truly want that relationship to be better? Do you want it to be as good as it can be? And if that answer is yes, and you'll know the answer, you'll know whether you want to put the effort in that's required to make it better. And I felt that I had gone beyond where I wanted to go, and I no longer wanted to put in what I knew to be the effort, because I felt that the goalposts just continually moved. And I had to either decide that I was going to commit even more to that and make myself even more vulnerable to that, regardless of the sort of rejections and the insults that I took in response to my growth and changes, or that I had to quit it. And with 4 boys involved, that's a very, very difficult decision to make, because society imposes these things and particularly coming, with my upbringing, I was raised Catholic, and you've got to stay together no matter what, for better, for worse. And, it's always best that you're together for the kids. You knew the financial difficulties that there were going to be as a result of splitting. And I just couldn't make that decision. But maybe in that moment, that was what then gave me the realization that decision had to be made sooner rather than later, because that couldn't carry on. It wasn't good for my ex's life, who I hugely respect. I have massive respect for her for what she's given up for our children. Watch how she supported me in many ways, although I do feel that our relationship is detrimental to each of us in many ways and detrimental to our children. And that's why I ultimately decided it was over. It was, I hugely respect her, but I realized that sooner or later I had to make that decision. And that was the catalyst, or one of the things that ultimately led to me making that decision and taking that action later on in 2017. So a bit of a long-winded one, but it was very deep.
Yeah. Jamie?
My answer here is probably going to be a bit of a controversial one. Just sat considering it, listening to Kevin there, and I love his honesty. It's one of the things I do really love about Kevin is his honesty with himself and with other people. And for me, personal development, I got so much out of it. One of the first personal development books I read was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. But UPW, I remember going to that with Kevin in 2017, and it was a great event, lots of great information, met tons of cool people. But for me, personal development events, those kinds of things were like a drug. And I'm being totally open and honest with you about this. It's not something I've talked much about before, but I loved the atmosphere. I just loved the energy, and it was a big escape for me.
Mm.
You know, my situation with my family business, and no disrespect to the family, the business, and everybody in it at all, but my situation in that business was shit. I was extremely unhappy and extremely unfulfilled. And looking back on that, I can see that I used personal development as an escape. It was a way to just get away from it all under the guise of, well, I'm making myself better, and it kind of spurred off into me like doing all of this other stuff, which ultimately, honestly, was a distraction taking me away from dealing with the problem that I had in front of me that was becoming all consuming. And even, you know, my first son was born in 2014. So even up to the point of 2017, I was an extremely absent father. You know, I wasn't there for my boy at all. I wasn't there for my partner at all, really. You know, I was so obsessed with Tae Kwon Do and training and just all of this stuff outside of myself that I just wasn't ever there, physically or mentally. I just wasn't present. And the personal development event side of things was just an extension to that. It was this addiction that I had. It was this escape. It was something that I could do and somewhere I could go that would make me feel better, because I was around all this positivity and all this love and light and all that shit. And that's great. And I got so much out of it. I learned a lot by going to those events. But at the same time, it wasn't massively helpful. And it wasn't until I came out of the other side of that quite recently, you know, probably in the last 12, 18 months or so, and started to find myself and face my things head on, that I've really made what I would call progress in my personal development. And it wasn't as a result of UPW or being in a mastermind or any of that stuff, but at the same time it was as well. You know, it wasn't the direct result of that, but those experiences and the effects they had on me and the escapism it gave me was extremely revealing as to the things that were wrong. When I was ready to face them, when I was ready to stand up to them and ready to face who I am. So UPW, Tony Robbins, I loved it. It was a great event. But what did it do for me? Honestly, not a lot. Not a lot. In terms of real significant change.
Sure.
There were lots of things that, I remember getting back to my hotel room after one of the nights. I think it was after day 3. And I recorded this video on my laptop. I've still got it somewhere. And I was just going on at myself like, you can't forget how you feel. Like you're going to do this and do that. And remember this and remember that and remember this. But it was so out of touch with who I truly was, who I truly am. And it was almost cringeworthy. Now, I don't knock it because I know a lot of people get a lot out of it. And like I said, I learned a lot from those events. You know, I've read fucking tons of books, man, and business books, personal development books, psychology, communication, like all of that shit. I've learned an awful lot. But there's no substitute for being brutally honest with yourself about who you are, what your negative points are, accepting those negative points and working to work with them rather than trying to fix everything. And you've got to accept that, like, you're not a perfect human being. You never will be. And I think a lot of the personal development space is predicated on achieving some level of perfection in humanity, in life, and we're never going to be perfect. It's a nice thing to talk about, and it's a nice thing to aim for, but we can't lose touch and lose focus of how fallible we really are. And that was probably one of the biggest realizations from all of that for me, is allowing myself to be comfortable with who I am. I suppose, look, here's a better answer for what I got out of all of that. What I got out of all of that, the best thing that I got out of all of that, was the man that you see sat before us there, Mr. Kevin Benison, because there's not a single person on this planet who has been there for me more since we met back in 2015 or whenever the fuck it was, who I've been able to turn to no matter what, who has been honest with me about what they see in me and the way I am, than that man. I cannot stress that enough. And I can see how the Tony Robbins stuff has played a massive part for Kevin, and certain other things as well. And the person he shows up as for me, and I'm sure many other people, but I can only speak from my personal perspective, that's fucking gold dust. Like, if you get yourself in your life a guy like Kevin, is, to me, you hold on to him with both hands.
Thank you, mate.
Awesome.
Well, it's honest. That's as brutally honest as I've ever been, and probably could get. Best thing I got out of all that was you, mate.
Thank you. This is saying that, mate. After, like, with the honesty you've just expressed there.
Yeah, beautifully said. There's only one thing, Jamie, that I will argue about what you said, which I understand. You did say in the beginning that you're going to be controversial, and of course, even though many people, myself included, had that light bulb moment like Kevin described, when I was in tears I was on the floor crying out. I was about to puke. I was that bad when I made the realization.
Is that because you're lucky enough to be with somebody like Toko?
That was actually on the third day, the Dickens process, when I realized the biggest limiting belief that were holding me back all my life, and that was preventing me from speaking out to people, speaking my opinion. I was completely introvert, very shy, terrified of what will others think if I speak, or that they don't really care of who am I to speak to you. I don't have anything that you would care to listen to, and that was shattered that day. So but coming back to what I started saying about Jamie, you said something, you mentioned the word perfection, and I wonder, is that really portrayed in personal development, to achieve perfection? I don't think so. If there is one word that I would personally would use, is fulfillment, or personal fulfillment, but not perfection. I don't think anyone tries to persuade you to be perfect. To become better, yes. To get to the next level, whatever that is, yes. But perfect, it's foolish to think of anyone that could achieve perfection, if such a thing exists anyway. But living a more fulfilled life by doing what you love to be doing, or what you were destined, if you want, to be doing, that's for me much more something that events like that can put you towards a direction, not perfection. But I agree with you about the addictive environment. Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. Yeah, I would love to be there. Of course, it's in a way it's artificial. We can't live our life in there unless we work for Tony Robbins directly and follow him around in his events. But,
well, even then there's a come down, and yeah, you're right, man. But I can only talk from my truth, and it comes back to what we said. What we talked about briefly at the start of the show is,
sure,
I'm not right, I'm not wrong, but I can only tell you what I feel in my heart about my experience and the way I lived through that. That doesn't mean it's that way for you, for Kevin, or for anybody else on the planet. But at the same time, it's important I'm honest about it, because there are going to be other people out there who are having a similar experience to the experience that I had. And so that where I am now, having come through all of that, and I still love personal development books. So I'm a bit more picky now, but I still very much in the personal development world. So don't for a second think that this is me slating it. And
no, not at all. That didn't come through like that.
I give my take on it, because I was listening as Jamie was saying that, and your point, Aggie, and it's an interesting one, because I've seen Jamie's almost, can't think of the word, but bucking against it, kick back to it in some ways. And I see you currently, you've got the Personal Development Mastery podcast, so a huge advocate of it. I've kind of been both camps, and there's some of the material that I've shared with Jamie, and Jamie's spoken about, some of the books that sort of really dismantle. And it's really interesting because, when Jamie was talking, he was saying about to be true to yourself, but sometimes to be true to yourself and to really, as you said, know who you are, sometimes you have to explore the things that you don't think are you. And maybe that. So the way that you worded it, Jamie, it did sound to me as though you were leveling that at the personal development world, or perhaps the event, that this is how it's putting it across, rather than wording it as though it was your perception of it. That was how it sounded. And I was wondering whether maybe that was your feeling, because in hindsight you were looking back at the lack of congruency between how you were at the time and how you were trying to be or portray yourself. And there was a fair contrast between, and maybe the ideal place was somewhere in the middle. And maybe you viewed what you were trying to be, maybe, possibly, could it be that you were striving for perfection and that's what you heard? Maybe. And one of the things that I shared when I spoke at a couple of events last year, I said, this is the mistake that people often make with personal development. They'll go to this seminar, they'll watch this video, they'll read this book, and they will try to become, some people will try to become this person delivering the seminar, this person giving the video, this person writing the book. And the truth of it is, the more you try to be someone else, the further away you are from being yourself. And if you treat it much more healthily on understanding how you would like to grow, not what you're trying to be, not what you're going to pretend to be, not what you think is the ideal, how you can improve. And there will always be things from another person that you can take and add value to you just by the way they are, even if it contrasts how they are, because it's given you an awareness of that's not how you want to be.
This is why Kevin is such a better communicator than me. But you're absolutely right. Like, it was my perception of that world and what the way I was looking at it and the things I was trying to be as a result of what I was seeing and who I was with and what I was learning that was the problem for me. That's why I said as well, like, this is not, like, it was good for me. You mentioned sometimes you've got to explore the person that you perhaps don't want to be, as well as the person that you think you've got to explore it all to find out what fits. And that was totally the case for me. And personal development and all that stuff, it helped in so many ways, but some of the ways that helped were through being detrimental to me because of the way I viewed it, because of the way I perceived it, and I took it on board and then tried to manifest that in my life. So yeah, you just put it a lot better than me without waffling quite as much.
I think I waffle pretty damn well, and my middle name is actually verbose.
Thank you for listening to this first part of the interview with Jamie Keeling and Kevin Benison. Tune in to the next episode, which is the second half of the interview, where we talk about public speaking, the human need for significance, and COVID-19 and the potential dystopian Orwellian future that we may be heading into. Well, I'm only half joking, but make sure that you tune in to episode 26 and listen to the second half of this intriguing and fascinating interview. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate and review Personal Development Mastery on Apple Podcasts. If you want to know more about me and how I can help you, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. You can either search for it on Facebook or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM group. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.